Welcome into After Carmen, 11 Warriors official postgame show from Ohio Stadium, where Ohio State earned a 35-7 win over Iowa. A slow start in this game, Ohio State only leading 7-0 at halftime, but in the second half, the Buckeyes pulled away very quickly. 4 straight touchdowns for Ohio State's offense, 3 straight takeaways for Ohio State's defense, and any threat of an upset. We just saw an upset in college football. Vanderbilt, just moments before we're recording this, pulled off an upset over the number 1 team in the country, Alabama, but Ohio State avoiding any such fate today with a dominant second half over the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, really pulled away in this game, like you said, the third quarter. You could just tell the halftime adjustments. And really that first half, you think about it, Ohio State had a turnover on downs on a 4th and 1 you don't convert on a kind of odd call there, going empty quarterback power. Not that quarterback run's a bad option on 4th and short. I just think you have to threaten the running back in that situation. But you throw an interception, Jeremiah Smith fumbles, you go into half at 7-0. I think the one thing that was impressive throughout this game for Ohio State was the run defense. And after some questions that had emerged about this defensive front, especially at the linebacker position the last couple of weeks, Sonny Styles had an awesome game today. Cody Simon did well in there at linebacker. Arvell Reese with some reps. Really the defensive line, Tyleik Williams, you could feel his presence back out there. Jack Sawyer probably had the best game of any defender with a sack and a half and a forced fumble. This was a defensive front that came in, and outside of 2 big runs, one of which came against the backups on defense, Caleb Johnson really got nothing going on the ground for Iowa in this game. And so you were impressed with that element for Ohio State, and then how they took over in the second half, as you mentioned, really did it with a mix of run and pass. Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, really big days again in the passing game. Ground game was going all game long, right around 7 yards a carry. And so just a lot of things to end up liking about this, even if it was a game that started clunky in the first half. But hey, it could be Alabama getting upset by Vanderbilt tonight. So I think you take a 35-7 win at home against a quality conference opponent.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa, that's what Iowa does. They make you play clunky. That's just kind of a Hawkeyes MO. They're never going to be a team that's going to overwhelm you offensively, but they play sound defense. They force you into turnovers. They make the game sloppy. And for a half, Iowa did a really good job of doing that. In the second half, Ohio State ultimately took over. Emeka Egbuka having maybe the game of his career with 3 touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith doing Jeremiah Smith things once again with a spectacular one-handed catch in the end zone. And I think probably the most impressive thing of this game for Ohio State is that Ohio State controlled the ground game. Because we talked about it all week. This was going to be by far the biggest test of the season so far for Ohio State in the ground game. And Ohio State ran the ball very well. Really, outside of 2 28-yard runs by Caleb Johnson, they bottled him up pretty much all day. And so for Ohio State to be able to control the ground game in a game where you're going against a team that going into today had been one of the best rushing offenses in the country and one of the best rushing defenses in the country, I think that made a big statement for where this Ohio State team is, especially running the ball on offense. Because we saw last year, the last couple of years really, that when Ohio State got into games against really good defenses, they struggled to move the chains on the ground. They showed they could do that today. I mean, Will Howard continuing to be effective in the quarterback run game, that 1-2 punch of Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson continuing to make plays, and the offensive line continuing to play really well up front.
Yeah, the trenches overall, really impressive for Ohio State. I think the most impressive thing from this game, position group to position group, outside maybe obviously the receivers when you look at what Emeka and Jeremiah did, but the defensive line, and I didn't talk about it in that last portion I just did, but I also wanted to give credit to not just Tyleik, but Ty Hamilton I thought had a great day on the inside, and they were able to roll some depth in too up front. But those 2 D tackles, when they're on the field and they're in their zone, they eat blocks like nobody's business. There's piles up front. They're establishing a new line of scrimmage. Iowa, you don't average 8 yards a carry. Your starting running back doesn't average over 8 yards a carry 4 games into the season without really good offensive line play. And this is an Iowa offensive line that traditionally has always had some really big horses up front, kind of in that same, traditional Midwestern Big Ten mode of like big physical offensive linemen that can beat you up in the ground game. And Ohio State just didn't let it happen to them today. Constant piles at the line of scrimmage. There was a wall on almost everything going up the middle for Caleb Johnson to run into. And then, like you said, it was just the two big 28-yard runs, and the second one came against Ohio State's second-team defense. So really big shout-out because it starts with those defensive tackles. And then on the flip side, coming into this game, Iowa has one of the nation's best linebackers, a really good defensive tackle tandem in Aaron Graves and Yahya Black. And those, you really didn't hear from those two defensive tackles today. Higgins made some plays all over the field because that's what a great linebacker is going to do. But this offensive line and what was their toughest challenge yet answered the bell as well as they have in any game so far. This ground game was going. There were holes all the time. It's clear the impact that Chip Kelly has had scheme-wise, but it's also clear the steps that group has taken in their development. Seth McLaughlin, I thought, played great again today. The right side. We had questions about the right side before, and in that first half, Ohio State's big chunk gains were coming behind Josh Fryer and Tegra Shabola out there, who it felt like. So I was tracking it every series, but it felt like Tegra was out there most of the series, and it is starting to emerge as that guy at right guard, despite how well Austin Sierreveld has also played at that position. So in the trenches, this was always going to be a test for Ohio State, and man, did they pass that test really well in this game.
And we got to give some praise to Ohio State's linebackers, too, because last week, you talked about it on the show, was not Ohio State's best game for the linebackers against Michigan State. I thought both Cody Simon and Sonny Styles were fantastic today. I think Sonny Styles probably went from having his worst game so far this season to having his best game so far this season in this game. Cody Simon, you saw him make those two turnovers to start the second half. He recovered the fumble that Jack Sawyer forced, and then he tipped the pass that Davison Igbinosun intercepted. So I think the linebackers really took a big step in today's game, probably their best game of the season. I think for Will Howard, it's kind of a lot of the same as what we've seen from him. We've kind of seen it where it's kind of his trend where he has that one pass that kind of makes you shake your head, and I think that would have been today. Late in the first half, he underthrows the ball for Emeka Buka. Sebastian Castro picks it off, but then he comes back in the second half and really turns it up. I think maybe his best throw as a Buckeye was the touchdown pass. I think it was his second touchdown pass to Emeka, left side of the end zone. There's only a really small window there on that left side of the end zone that he's got to throw it into to make that play. He put it pinpoint. So I think all in all for Will Howard, you have that one interception. You're still seeing some inconsistency on the deep ball. Even if you take the 53-yard pass to Jeremiah, you go, well, if he let him there, that's probably a touchdown for Jeremiah. Didn't matter because Jeremiah mossed that DB on the very next play. But you see a pass like that throw to Emeka. You look at his final stat line, I think he completed about 80% of his passes. All in all, a good day for Will Howard. Certainly next week against Oregon is going to be a big test for Will Howard. But I think all in all, as you go into that first really big game of the season, for the most part, you feel good about what you're seeing from Ohio State's quarterbacks. He accounted for 5 touchdowns today against a really good defense. That's a pretty good day.
I think overall a great day for Will Howard, and I think the thing that was impressing me the most on that throw, I thought the other really impressive throw that he had was either a 4th or 3rd and short conversion to Brandon Innes on a glance route that he had to really zip in there because there were some linebackers and D linemen trying to get some hands up. Looked like an RPO look, might have been, but that glance route is, it's a deeper slant basically, and coming right across the field. It was great timing on that throw and great timing on the touchdown to Emeka you just mentioned, as well as great ball placement and accuracy. That's a wheel route. Emeka's running full speed up the sideline. Not an easy throw to make at all. So those were very impressive. And I think that, we talk about his arm strength and the ball to Jeremiah. Look, that traveled 53 yards in the air, the deep ball to Jeremiah.
It's a long way.
It's a long way. I don't blame him much for underthrowing that pass. But I think, again, some of his throws that are 25 and under are so accurate that as long as you have the threat of that vertical component, as long as you can take the top off the defense once a game, it's enough of a threat to where you're just having you're having so much other success in so many other areas of the field with this Ohio State offense, with again, some of those intermediate throws, with the screen game, with the run game. It's the complete picture of Ohio State. They might not, again, need that vertical component as much, and he's doing a lot of other things well at the quarterback position. Again, save for that interception, which is definitely a throw he wants back. But again, overall, you can pick nits, but this was I really thought this was just another stepping stone for an Ohio State team that's building towards something special. You get your biggest test of the first half of the season here with Oregon coming up next week, which was a point of emphasis, for Day in his press conference after the game, talking about once they step out of the locker room from this game, it's right on to Oregon and that challenge that awaits for them out on the West Coast next week. But I think today you saw real steps from the linebackers was encouraging. Ohio State answering the bell, improving their gains in the run game are real. I think overall you should come away from this game pretty happy if you're an Ohio State fan, especially given how it started and some of the clunkiness and then taking over in the second half.
Lots more coverage of Ohio State versus Iowa to come on 11warriors.com. And then, of course, tons of coverage coming over the next week as we get ready for Ohio State's road trip to Oregon. Ohio State probably going to be number 2 in the country after that Alabama loss. Oregon going to be somewhere in the top 5 or 6. It doesn't get much bigger when you talk about a regular season game than that Ohio State versus Oregon game next week. So we can't wait for that one. Lots more coverage to come on 11warriors.com. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of After Carmen.